Welcome to The Walk. I'm Tony Leon, your host. This is the place where you'll be enlightened, encouraged, and empowered to work out your own salvation without fear of being led astray. For we walk by faith and not by sight. And God's word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. And as we go on this journey together, we're going to follow the Lamb, Jesus Christ, wherever he goes, and we shall do so in spirit and in truth. Now we're going to get right into our program with the topic of the day, and that is how to start a conversation. So if you think about it, we're not talking about how to do a conversation or how to conduct a conversation. We're talking about how to start. That means we've got to have a certain type of approach. So what I want to do is I want to think about what do we want to achieve with any kind of conversation. Well, the first thing you have to think about is there must be some type of guidelines. And those guidelines must be based upon some type of mutual benefit for each individual. Okay. So let's think about being mutual as the focus, because when you're talking to somebody, it can't just be big I's and little U's. We have to think about it as we're on equal terms. So let's focus on mutual. Mutual. Experienced or done by each of two or more parties toward the other or others. And what is that basically saying is that we need to have a give and a take. So as freely you receive, you give, and so forth. So you have to look at it like you just can't just keep taking. You have to be able to give. So when you're in a conversation, there's some guidelines that we have to think about in order to get to that goal of mutual benefit. So let's focus on some of the things that we have to go into with a certain mindset. And that mindset has to be where we are thinking about, I don't have all the answers. I'm talking about somebody going into a conversation. I don't know what's going on. I have no idea exactly what's in that person's mind. So we have to have no prejudice, if I could put it that way. We're not supposed to judge one another. We have to go into it like almost like a blank slate. Okay. Think of it like, hey, blank slate. I know we all got past, we got baggage, but we have to still look at it from the perspective of, hey, we got baggage, but let's go ahead and start emptying it out so that we can go ahead and move forward. So let's focus on not judging one another. And let's look at the biblical account on that. And it's in Matthew 7, verse 1. It says, judge not that ye be not judged. Now, I want to read the other aspects of that text because it doesn't just stop at verse 1. It goes to verse 5. And I'm going to read this. Verse 2 to 5, it says, for with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. Okay. And with what measure ye mete, and mete is basically what you dish out, so to speak. You know, how you dish it out. It shall be measured to you again. You know, like you give them that give and take type of thing. It says, and why beholdest thou the mote? Now, a lot of people think of the mote, and I guess I kind of thought the same thing. Like a mote. Let me read this verse. It says, and why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? And when you think about beam and mote, a lot of times people do think of beam as in like a beam that holds up a house, you know, and a mote like a little splinter or something like that. But mote really is more like considered like a speck of dust. You can almost compare it like, here you have this big beam that's holding up a house, but then you have this mote, which happens to be like sawdust. Think of it like sawdust. It's not even comparable. You think about something so small and almost insignificant that you could just say, you don't even see it. And that's the reason why we're supposed to focus on our own self first. That's why I said the beam first. Consider this the beam in your own eye. Now it says, or how wilt thou, and this is verse 4, or how wilt thou say to thy brother, let me pull out that small speck of dust, you know, that mote out of thine eye. And behold, a beam is in thine own eye. So that's like God, Jesus is basically saying, you know, that doesn't make sense, right? Talking to us. But then it says, thou hypocrite. This is what Jesus is saying. Thou hypocrite. First cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye. So it's possible to cast the mote out of your brother's eye, like almost like, you know how sometimes people get a little lash in their eye and somebody sees that and they're trying to help the person get it out. I mean, that's just an example how you want to assist them. You want to help them along the way. Not so much as saying blame game. You know, you got a problem. It's not about that. It's not about you're pointing out a problem. It's more like hey, you know what? There's an issue and we can help to come to some type of reasonable conclusion or solution. So if we focus on ourselves as in what we want to bring to the table, as far as in a conversation, then you have the right attitude, or should I say the right approach. And then we can focus on not being so prejudiced toward the other person. And let's look at it right now. Prejudice. Prejudice is basically a preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. It's preconceived. It's almost like when it happens, meaning this prejudice is basically you're looking at somebody in not a real sense. It's just preconceived. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory. It has no merit. You know, it's no just cause. It's basically you just putting something out there because of, I really don't know how prejudices come about, but I know a lot of prejudices come about because of how you grew up, your upbringing, or what you're just used to or accustomed to. And then you just basically just view certain aspects of the world a certain way. Then you create this, or not you create this, but what's happening is it's developed in the ideology. And this ideology you just carry with you because you just don't put on any filters. And if we put on filters, then we start realizing that, you know, not the world is not what we think it is, you know, meaning the world is real. It's not what you think it is, you know. So let's focus on something else. Matthew 6:14 says, "For if ye forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you." This is important too when you go into a conversation, because sometimes when you go into a conversation with somebody, you might have a grudge. You might have a little bitterness. There's something there that's keeping you from the love of Christ, or should I say love towards your brother or your fellow man. And what happens is there's a so-called barrier, this barrier that we create because we don't have the spirit of forgiveness. So when I think about the spirit of forgiveness, I think about how we're supposed to have this thing where we're open and we're free from condemnation toward our fellow man. We're not supposed to have condemnation toward our fellow man. What we're supposed to do is we're supposed to think about this word and this concept called forgiveness. But let's not think about forgiveness. Let's think about what does it mean to forgive? Forgive. Forgive basically means to stop feeling angry or resentful towards someone for an offense, flaw, or mistake. Now look at this for a moment. The key word I want to focus on is stop. Now, why does it start with stop? Because when you think about stop, that means it was already going on. That means something was happening. You were feeling angry, resentful before. Now it's like, okay, do you have to continue in that? No, forgiveness means, Lord, I don't want to keep that thing going on. I don't want to have a resentment. I don't want to have a grudge, no bitterness in my heart. Yeah, there was pain, there was suffering that I have. Now, what I want to do is I want to let it go. Like let go and let God. You know, that offense that happened to you, that little flaw or that mistake, that little mote, whatever it may have been, then you basically said, you know what, I do not want to hold that in my heart anymore. What I want is I want reconciliation. Let's think about this. When we come to the grips with ourselves that we want reconciliation, not recompense, not consequences and repercussions. We want reconciliation with our fellow man. We want to be able to say, you know what? I want to do my part, and I hope that you can do your part, and I hope that we can do our parts together, and we can so-called just move forward. Because if you go into a conversation already pegging your friend or your cousin, your uncle, your sister, your brother, whoever it may be in your life, and you peg them, you know, peg them in like you figured them out. Because sometimes you can read people, or so you think. But a lot of times that is what you call a big mistake. Because in the eyes of God, God looks at that as judging, or should I say prejudging. And when you prejudge somebody, God says, no, you're going to be judged. See, don't judge lest you be judged. So you got to go into a conversation with no prejudice. I know some people say, well, that doesn't mean that. Well, it does, because when you go into with preconceived notions on whoever you're having this conversation with, that's the wrong approach. You have to almost say, let's just say you do have this thing in your heart where you already kind of pegged somebody. You have to say, I kind of figured this is how it's going to go. Now, that's a temptation, I guess you can call it that. Or you kind of have a preconceived notion to a certain degree. But when you go into it and on that premise and that foundation, it's going to go sour quick. You almost have to think about it like, okay, I might have some type of preconceived notions, but I'm willing to look past that. If that makes any sense. I'm willing to look past it to move forward. So let's see where we can go from there. So then when a person says, you know what, I got a problem with you. Now, they're not telling you that, but they saying it to themselves. I got a problem with you because of A, B, or C. You know, something that you did to them. And like the Bible says, if you have aught, you go to your brother. So it means you have something against your brother. There's nothing wrong with that, because the Bible always has a way of escape, if I could put it that way. You go to your brother, you let them know, hey, this is what's going on with me, with you. You know, come now, let us reason. Let's discuss this thing. And we have the right attitude. That means we don't judge them, and we have the spirit of forgiveness. We can start the conversation with the right approach. Now, when you look at a person, you have to think about they're your equal. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, what do you mean? Let's say I have a conversation with my son. He's not my equal, but you got to look at him on equal terms. All have to be like little children. And what does that mean? We all have to be moldable, fashionable, if I could put it that way, where here's God, the potter, okay, and we're the clay. I ain't saying we got to be the clay to other people. No, because there's some toxic people out there that basically just want to bully you and do all kinds of damage to you, you know, cause all kinds of harm. And that's not good. Our main focus is supposed to be on equal terms. No, like I said, no big eyes or little U's. So when we focus, we need to look and say, hey, I'm sorry. Hey, I don't care if you my parent. I don't care if you my son, my daughter. We're on equal terms because God is over on all of us. So if we do our part, then we'll be fine. I was going to give an example. Like when I think about my past, I was once a child. Everyone was a child. But in my childhood, there was a time where I thought it would be great if we had this thing called rules of engagement. Now, I just want to focus on this term right quick. This rules of engagement. Let's just think about rules of engagement. When we engage with somebody, there needs to be some guidelines, okay? And these guidelines have to be laid out in such a way where both parties would be able to say, you know what, that's fair. You know what? And I'm cool with that. But look at this. I think, and I'm not going to bring out any body's names or anything like that, but I'm going to mention there was an opportunity for me to have what you call a learning, like life as a lesson, learn from it, to learn something. But then I think it got stunted with my so-called spiritual growth or my moral growth or whatever you want to call it. So what happened was, I'm gonna tell myself, I was like, how can I say this? I was playing with some towel. Now this is back in, I think, the 70s, late 70s. And I was young and I'm like playing with some towel. And when I say tile, I'm talking T-I-L-E on the floor. It was in the basement near the furnace. And I think this is in my aunt's house. And why was I playing with it? I think I can recall I was trying to do some type of, I don't know, like little stick man or action figure or whatever it was, you know, kids, right? But it's weird because it's towel. You know, you don't supposed to take up no towel from the floor. Okay, I'm a kid. I wasn't thinking like that, okay? And I did it. It was near the furnace, like away from the general populace walking around. But my aunt found out. She was upset. Okay, so now I'm not knocking what my aunt was upset about. I'm looking at it like, okay, she was upset. And then most parents, guardians, whoever's over you, they tend to either scold you or not get down to the bottom of things. And what happened was, it was more like, kind of like, it was more like a boom. Like I don't even think a spanking got in there. It was more like I felt so bad because of what I did, but I didn't understand why was it such a bad thing other than it just upset my aunt. So I'm looking at it like, if we can train up our children in the way they should go, when they get older, they won't depart from it. There would be like what you call this life lesson thing. Like, this is how I think it could have went, something like this. My aunt could have approached me and said, hey, this is messed up. You ain't supposed to do that with the towel. She could be upset. Remember, be angry and sin not. But the bottom line is, why you do that? There you go. Ask a question. Get an understanding. With all you're getting, get understanding, right? Why you do that? Now, I would have said something like this, because remember, this is me. I'm the one that did it. I was trying to make a stick man or something like that. And she'd have been like, you don't make no stick man with no towel. Well, why are you doing that? That's wrong. And then I said, then it would have hit me really like, yeah, that's not right. Because people walk on the town and stuff. And plus, this is property. And I shouldn't have done that in the first place. I was wrong. Because I did feel bad because it wasn't something you're supposed to pick up. I guess I knew that. But it was weird because now I started realizing like, man, asking it should be given you. What if I had asked? And then maybe I would have got some action figure or something like that and then be able to play without messing up somebody else's stuff. Okay, that's just giving a little example. But then this is another thing. Okay, I was sitting at the table and there was everybody at the table. You have all my cousins and everybody, my aunt. And it was weird because I wasn't used to sitting at a table and I was quiet. I was an introvert when I was younger. I was. I mean, right now, you can tell I'm an extrovert. I talk, blah, blah, blah. But when I was younger, I was quiet. So I'm just sitting there. And I guess it was just an odd thing. I'm looking around at everybody at the table, right? A lot of people at this table. And I'm looking at it like, just an odd thing, And then my aunt, she looked right at me like, she got that look. And I looked at her like, like I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And then she snapped off. She said, what are you looking around for? I'm like, I don't know. It was just weird. But I just thought it could have went a little bit different. Like she could have came to me and said, later on, I just noticed you were looking around. What was that about? I was like, I don't know. This is a weird thing. Just seeing everybody sitting at the table. Why would that be such a weird thing to you? I guess because we're not used to sitting at the table together. I mean, I'm usually taking my plate and we're just in front of the TV or something like that. I'm just saying, like, this is something to think about when you go into it with the attitude of like, hey, let's get down to the bottom of things. Most parents don't really think of it like that. They look at it in a sense of, oh, kids will be kids, but at the same time, it's like, you ain't supposed to do certain things. But kids need to know that. Kids need to know they're not supposed to do certain things. Kids need to know that there's love beyond just, this word called love. Because I always look at the word love as care. And when we care about somebody, you think about bearing, being there for them. Even though you might think they should know better, and the key word is should know better, they might not. Or they might not know it on the level that you think they should. There you go. So if we go into it almost like a blank slate, and when you talk to somebody, whether it's a kid, your parent, or whoever, you kind of go into it with the attitude and saying, you know what? I want to be a good person. Not that you want to be the better person, because all of y'all supposed to be equals. But y'all go into it with this attitude like, hey, I want to reason. I want to get somewhere with this person. So I like to look at these rules of engagement biblically. And when I look at it in 1 Corinthians 13, I always go back to this. Now, I didn't give it to you in text or verse form. I'm giving it to you as the points, of interest. Where it says, charity suffereth long. What does that mean? It means to bear, to carry. That's what it means. It starts off with that. A lot of people miss that. It says suffereth long. A lot of people take a lot of Bible terms and they'll look at that term with a very evil eye, if I could put it that way. They say suffer. Ooh, suffer. But you got to understand what suffer means biblically. It means to bear, to carry, things of that nature. That sounds like a good thing. It's an enduring word, But then you look at kind. A lot of people miss up with that kind word. Kind is basically just being considerate of others. So when you're going into this conversation with people, it's a mindset that you need to have from your heart to say, you know what? Hey, I got to be willing to bear. Bear what? Bear the fact that they're not you, they don't think like you, and they might have something to say that may not be 100% okay with you. They may say something that may just, what you call that word, irk you, or whatever it may be. And you may have to just bear with that. You got to endure. Remember, all things work together for good for those who love the Lord. What you trying to get to the end of this? You're trying to have resolution, or should I say reconciliation, because something happened between you and that other person that you're having a conversation with. Now look, envy if not, charity, envy if not. Don't hate, appreciate. A lot of people look at envy and they look at it as a good thing. I heard people say, I righteously envy you. I'm like, how can you righteously envy me when it's not a righteous word? We got to be very careful what we say. Because when I think about envy, I think about hating on people. I mean, I'm sorry, that's what I think about. Like somebody's doing something, either A, that you like that they're doing, that you wish that you were doing, or wish that you could do it, or they're doing something that they feel like you should not be able to do it, which is kind of a weird thing. It's like if somebody's doing something, you should be, hey, go ahead, you know, like you looking at them in a good way. Like, you know, I wish you well, that type of thing. Not who does he think he is? I get that all the time from different people, whether it be family members or people that I just come across, because they don't look at envy as a bad thing. It is a bad thing, okay? Vaunteth not. Don't boast. Boasting is not a good thing, especially if you're having a conversation with somebody. You're sitting there and you're boasting about yourself. What I mean by boasting, I'm talking about your accolades or what you about, and this person is just feeling like this, and they're going down, down, down. In other words, their whole self, what you call that? Their self esteem. Duh. Their self-esteem is going down lower and lower and lower. See, that doesn't help people. Boasting is not good. Bam. Look at this. Verse 5. Well, the 5th point, not the verse. It says, not puffed up. Puffed up. Basically, what's the opposite is being humble. We need to be humble. Now, humble is not a bad thing. Humble is good, because Jesus was humble and he made it popular. Because a lot of people in Capernaum and everywhere else was saying, they were looking at Jesus like, who is he? And he just smooth about it, because he's looking at doing his Father's work. And when he's doing his Father's work, he's looking out for the other people, the lame, you know, the blind, and everyone else in between. And when you're doing it with the spirit of like, hey, we're all in this thing together and I'm here to help. See, that's a really good thing. Humility is good, you know. Boom. Not behave unseemly. Be appropriate and reasonable. That's what it means. Some people say unseemly mean, oh, don't let your good be evil spoken of. Well, yeah, to a certain degree, but unseemly is more like you need to be appropriate. Like, I'm just giving an example. I don't know if it's a good example, but I'm gonna give it an example. Hey, here you are, you're wearing a bathing suit, okay? And you're going to church with the bathing suit. That's inappropriate, right? But then you're at the beach with your bathing suit. Then you may say, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. See what I'm saying? You just gotta be appropriate. There's a time and place for everything. So you got to look at being reasonable and appropriate. Like sometimes people just demand a certain thing from you, and somehow they're just being unreasonable. And you'd be like this is not getting anywhere. Let's come to terms with the fact that, hey, you know, this is not reasonable. Let's be appropriate about this on how you approach things and stuff like that. And then last but not least, on this point, not easily provoked. In other words, be cool. Be cool, boy. Real cool. So how you be cool? Sometimes you get hot-headed and you just get out of sort. Okay, when that happens, sometimes you got to come back down to planet Earth. Sometimes you're not the voice of reason. Someone else might be. If they're not envious and they trying to look out for you and they say, hey, you know what? I do want to resolve our issues. So I'm just letting you know. Sometimes people do this. Now, this is weird. I don't know how you would take this, but they say, calm down. Sometimes when you tell people calm down, it revs them up. It's just one of those natural phenomena of the human spirit or whatever. But I'm looking at it like somehow you got to bear with them to get them calm. How would you like to be calmed down? You got to think about stuff like that. I'm not going to go into details about that. I'm just talking about the right attitude, the right spirit. Now, going over here, we said think no evil. That means be sympathetic. You know, evil is harm. So don't focus on harming them, because you can harm somebody physically, yeah, but you can be messing them up emotionally. And how you do that is because you can say the wrong word. Sometimes people call people out of their names. It's not good. Then you're going to have to just reel it back in. You know, you got to think about their pain, their sorrow, their suffering, whatever they went through, and be there for them, and don't think evil about them. Don't think about harming them even further than what they already are going through. But we have to think about, we need to be there for them. And not just being sympathetic, we need to be empathetic. We need to put ourselves in their shoes. And when you do that, you can relate to them a lot better, okay? But then, rejoice if not in iniquity. That means don't have self-interest. Don't be working for your own interests and stuff like that. But rejoice in the truth. Rejoice in the truth. Give me back. Rejoice. Rejoice in the truth. That means desire for resolution. Remember, the truth will make you free. And when you're free indeed. So the focus is getting down to the truth, getting down to the bottom of things. Sometimes people just want to touch the surface and they want to just leave things alone after that. But then you have unresolved issues. So when you come to a conversation, I guess you got to think about who you're dealing with, because my wife and I had this discussion. If you come into the table, you have to look at this thing and say, we need to work things out, not according to you, not according to me, but according to us, because two can't walk together unless they be agreed. Now, some people say, you know, I can agree to disagree, but that won't get you anywhere. No resolution, no reconciliation. But I like to look at all of the other stuff and just put it all and wrap it up in one package. Because when you think about these last four things, charity beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, and endureth all things. Now, when you think about bear, it started off with bear, right? Well, it started it off with the focus that it meant bear, okay? Because it suffereth long, but that means to bear. So God is really focusing on charity is a work in progress. We're supposed to work with one another, okay? We're our brother's keeper. When we think about stuff like that, we got to think about we're all in this thing together. Now, some people, now this is weird, some people don't think like that. They think of themselves higher than others, and some think of themselves lower than others. No, there's no big eyes or little U's. That's why you have so many people that's full of despair right now, because they're not being esteemed, if I can put it that way. They're not being encouraged in the faith. See, that's what this walk is all about. It's about walking by faith. It's about encouraging each other in the faith. And how are you going to do that if you're just stuck on your stupid and stuck on yourself? Now, I was thinking about how we have a lot of problems in this nation. And one thing in particular is how we have this prejudice. And a lot of people can look at prejudice and focus on things like racism and stuff like that. And I was looking at like, how can a racist be saved? Now, all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. But how can a racist be saved? Because if a racist is saying, my brother is not my equal, I just said it, my brother is not my equal, this is weird, then I would not want my brother to be with me if that's if you want to go to heaven. I don't want my brother to be with me in heaven, because I don't think he belongs there, because he's not my equal. Because that's what racism is, in so many words. You're thinking that you're better than others, I guess, something like that. So I was just thinking about this. When you think about how Jesus liked to teach people, he uses parables, right? So I was thinking about this right here. This is the parable of the debtor. I think that's how you say it. Well, it was Matthew 18, verse 21 to 35. I don't think I'm gonna read this. I'm gonna try to like break it down to the, to the minutest points. So if you think about it, he was talking to Peter. And basically Peter, sometimes Peter gets beside himself, right? And it was all about this thing called not to judge and also to forgive. And I was looking at how Jesus was saying in so many words, and I guess I would start a little bit and then I would just kind of wing it. It says, then came Peter to him, and this is verse 21, and said, Lord, how oft shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Till 7 times? That's what Peter's saying. And Jesus said unto him, I say not unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. That's a lot, so to speak. It's supposed to be indefinite, so to speak. And then it says, therefore is the kingdom of heaven likened unto a certain king, which would take account of his servants. It's almost like I should read this because I want y'all to see the nuances. It gets crazy, okay? It says in verse 24, and when he had begun to reckon, one was brought unto him. Okay, this is the king. It says, which owed him 10,000 talents. Now, how much is that? That's a lot. They were doing some different type of calculations on how much a talent was. And when you bring out 10,000 talents, I mean, I'm just saying this, y'all can look it up too. They were saying it's like in the millions. Yeah, a lot. Millions. Matter of fact, I think there was a calculation that came up to a little over 8 million. So it was a lot. 10,000 talents. Okay. Then it says, but for as much as he had not to pay, because, I guess he's broke, his Lord command him to be sold. That means him be sold. His wife, that's messed up, and children, and all that he had, and payment to be made. That means that's messed up, right? Him, his wife, his kids, anything he had, and he still had to pay on top of that. Okay. All right. The servant, this is verse 26. The servant therefore fell down and worshiped him, saying, Lord, have patience with me, and I will pay thee all. And in verse 28, verse 27. Then the Lord of that servant was moved with compassion and loosed him and forgave him the debt. Let me stop there. He forgave him the debt. Do y'all know what that means? I mean, I just gave y'all an example how much 10,000 talents was. So it's a parable, I get it, but just this example that Jesus gave, he forgave him his debt. Now, look at the example. I mean, because I think a lot of people miss this. The servant, he begged. Please forgive me. And I'm pretty sure he was sincere. Just like Peter was sincere when he said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And then, Jesus says, later on, after Peter got beside himself, he said, get thee behind me, Satan. So at the time, I'm pretty sure he was sincere. Just like at the time, this servant was sincere. And the guy was moved and said, your debt is forgiven. Now that's deep, because I'll be looking at it like that's how forgiveness comes about. Some people say, well, forgiveness is you're supposed to have a spirit of forgiveness. Yes, you have a spirit of forgiveness, but then you have to forgive. Okay. And in this case, forgiveness is because it's given. It's almost like the person asking for it and they're giving it. And it's kind of weird because I'll be hearing little scenarios for different people and, ministers, and they'll say, oh, you're supposed to forgive. But then they say something like this. Somebody asked for forgiveness and you forgive them. Now this person wronged you. They did something bad and they already revved up to do it again. But you're supposed to forgive them and take it like they bullying you. I don't know if that's the spirit of forgiveness. Spirit of forgiveness is more like, like the Bible says, Jesus says, if they don't receive you, you shake the dust and get stepping, so to speak. Because sometimes you just got to move away from toxic people, but you still forgive them. You have the spirit of forgiveness. That means you ain't got to still keep taking the abuse. But a lot of people keep getting abused over and over and over again, thinking that they have to keep forgiving them over and over again. No, you forgive them indefinitely. But abuse is a different thing. You have to back off from the abuse, but you continue to forgive, if that makes any sense. But look at this. So then it says, but, this is verse 28, but the same servant, now this is after the king was touched and moved. And he said, all your debts forgiven. He says, but the same servant went out and found one of his fellow servants, which owed him 100 pence, which is really nothing. I don't know the exact amount, but it was really insignificant. And he laid hands on him and took him by the throat. Yeah. Saying, pay me that thou owest. Now, that's kind of rough. And his fellow servant fell down at his feet, similar scenario, and besought him, saying, have patience with me, and I will pay thee all. Same scenario, right? Then, in verse 30, and he would not, but went and cast him into prison till he paid the debt. That's messed up. So, when the fellow servants saw that he was done, or what he has done, that were very sorry. They were very sorry and came and told unto their Lord all that was done, or he has done. Then his Lord, after that he had called him, said unto him, O thou wicked servant, I forgave thee all that debt because thou desirest me. Shouldn't thou not also have had compassion on thy fellow servant, even as I had pity on thee? And his Lord was wroth. That means he was very angry. That's messed up. And delivered him to the tormentors till he should pay all that was due unto him. Let's see, he could have easily got out of this $8 million debt. That's messed up. So likewise, now this is it. This is the moral of the story. So likewise shall my heavenly Father, this is Jesus talking. So likewise shall my heavenly Father do also unto you. If ye from your hearts, that's the heart now, wicked above all things, who should know it? Who can know it? From your hearts, forgive not everyone his brother their trespasses. Now, I don't know if you all noticed this. When you think about the Lord's Prayer, it says, Our Father. That means you're addressing him, not nobody on earth. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Then you're asking him, give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. There's a condition there. So you're asking him, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And the other one says, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. See? Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. So I'm just looking at it like, we're conditional with God. Now, some people may think, well, why is God conditional like that? Because God is looking at, do unto others as you have them do unto you. And God is not mocked, whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap. So if you don't forgive people their debts, then God can't forgive you. If you judge, then he's going to judge you. So it's one of those things where you got to look at, man, you know what? I got to watch what I do, watch how I think, watch how I act. And I was just looking at, when you look how people act, it's not based upon in general, because I said this, and I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, but when in general you see people with no adversity, if I could put it that way, generally you see people and they act cool. I mean, I've seen all kinds of people up close and personal, from gangbangers to rednecks to everybody. And everyone I've seen in general would act nice, act cool, composed, you know, and everything would be cordial and everything. But then you hear if they get angry or somebody crossed their path or something, and then you just looking and say, man, this person ain't the same person that you've seen before. I mean, I had people say that to me because I've been mistaken for different type of people too. Because I guess I was to myself and stuff. People thought I was a head of a gang or something. That's how I'm not, you know. And people were scared of me at certain times. And I'm like, no, maybe I guess we got to think about how are we in general, you know, how we affect others and how people view us. But in general, people are nice and cool in general. But the thing is, when adversity comes, then you can see how a person really is. You can see their true colors, see? And that's what's messed up because I was thinking about, and I said this before, there was a time in the Capitol on the 6th that it was an officer. He was called repeatedly, nigger, 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 over and over again. And it bothered me because I kept thinking to myself, this is an officer. I shouldn't be upset because it's an officer. He's just a human being. He's an American. I mean, it's just weird because I keep thinking about, man, I would like to show his testimony. Okay, or the interview. If you all don't mind, if you can bear with me, I kind of edited a little bit so I can get the gist of it. But check this out because I want you all to just pay attention to some of these elements that I said about how you can conduct a conversation or how you should start a conversation. Well, he was in a situation where, let's just see what happens and we'll talk about it. Let's check this out.
Many calls on the radio, priority, help, somebody's trapped, we need help, shots fired.
What's the first moment that you began to get a sense that something is off kilter here?
We were told to get helmets, riot helmets. That was new.
But no sense that all hell could break loose.
Correct. You just see a sea of people, Trump flags, Confederate flags, thin blue line flags, don't tread on me flags. And then you look down and you see officers fighting with these people, pepper spray, smoke grenades, gas grenades, pepper balls, being thrown by everybody, flashbangs. We fought with these people who were prepared for a fight. They had on gas masks, they had on body armor, they had on two-way radios, they had on tactical gear, bulletproof vests. They were ready to go.
When you see that level of preparedness, did that surprise you? Did it scare you?
I was scared. I was absolutely scared. I'm on this platform. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'7". I'm this giant person. And we had our guns out, and I'm thinking, all these people out there, they're armed too. And I'm like, I'm gonna get shot. They're gonna take me out. I remember at one point I said, how is this gonna end?
Eventually, the mob forced its way inside the Capitol building. Officer Dunn confronting a group carrying a Blue Lives Matter flag.
I said, we got dozens of officers down. We got dozens of officers down. And you got the nerve to be holding a Blue Lives Matter flag. I thought they were gonna have a moment where they came to and they realized, like, yo, what are we doing? But like, they instantly snapped out of it and they said, nah, we're doing this for you. We're doing this for you. And as one of the guys kept walking by, the other one pulled out his badge and said, trust me, I understand. We're doing this for you, buddy. And he's got a badge. He shows me his badge.
What did you think? Fellow officers in the building?
You gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me.
Exhausted, Officer Dunn tried reasoning with a large group of protesters approaching a hallway he was guarding.
I literally told them, if they want to get through here, you got to go through me. And they didn't. They just started talking to me. They were saying how Joe Biden did not win the election and nobody voted for him. So I took the bait and okay, what about me? I voted for Joe Biden. Does my vote not count?
This is when Officer Dunn encountered a couple in the crowd who began hurling the most vile of racial slurs at him, a black officer.
And his girlfriend, she had on a pink MAGA shirt. He said, hey, this voted for Joe Biden, guys. Hey, everybody, this voted for Joe Biden. They said, you.
So the crowd joined in?
Everybody joined in with him.
You're in the Capitol, defending the Capitol. And somehow race seeped into that too.
Everybody wants to say that it was about politics and everything, but it was a large number of people in that crowd that were racist.
Did the people who were there tell you why they were there?
We're stopping this steal. According to them, they were doing it for us. They were doing us a favor. According to those terrorists.
You're very precise. You use the word terrorist.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It wasn't just a mob or a bunch of thugs, you know. They were terrorists. They tried to disrupt this country's democracy. That was their goal. And you know what? Y'all failed.
But 5 people lost their lives that day, including Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. After the Capitol had been cleared, Officer Dunn had his first chance to reflect on what he had witnessed.
It's just a cloud of smoke, water bottles, broken flag poles, everything in the rotunda just laying there on the floor.
The rotunda.
The rotunda.
The pinnacle
of the American democracy. And all this stuff is there. And I sat down with a good friend of mine. So I said, is this America? What happened? And I told him, I got called a couple dozen times today, protecting this building. Is this America? They beat police officers with Blue Lives Matter flags. They fought us. They had Confederate flags in the US Capitol. They stormed the Speaker's office. They went through their sensitive documents. They were trying to assassinate the Vice President in the Capitol.
What's the gamut of emotions?
I've got angry. I got sad. I got hurt. Even just during this interview, I'm getting angry now, but I don't mind talking about it, and that's how I get through it.
Dunn has nothing but praise for his fellow officers, including Eugene Goodman, who was seen on camera shielding the unguarded Senate floor and directing Senator Mitt Romney away from that mob of protesters.
There were dozens of Eugene Goodmans that day, dozens. Eugene got caught on camera, and I'm not surprised that he did the right thing, the brave thing, the heroic thing. He deserves everything that he's getting. But there were so many Eugene Goodmans that weren't caught on camera that day, and I'm proud to work with them.
See, look at this. I was just thinking about how not every white person, but you have a great deal of them looking at black people in a general way. Like, it's kind of weird. I don't want to say the word animals, but we are not civil. We're not civil. We're lower than them on every front, if I could put it that way. Now, this is not every white person, but I'm just saying, I wanted to show you this example, how this officer, Harry Dunn, this is the one I told you about before, how they called him nigger, nigger, nigger all over the time. He said a couple dozen times, so you know that's a lot. And he was getting it from, of course, white people. But it's weird because some people say that's a bad example for white people. I'm sorry, it's a bad example, but it's a good example because it lets you know that even now in 2021, racism is still revved up. It's at an all-time high. It's just that now we see its ugly head in our face and personal, especially with law enforcement. Blue Lives Matter. I mean, come on. They don't really believe in that. It's weird because I say they, I'm talking about the people that are so-called for this white supremacy or whatever you want to call it. I don't really think it's white supremacy. I think it's people that want to be supreme. They want to feel better. That's like bully syndrome, if I could put it that way. They want to think that they're better. They want to believe that they're better. But I don't really think that people think that they're better. So they try to empower themselves to, get over on other people, to make them feel superior. And that's a facade. So there's really no such thing as white supremacy, because a lot of those white supremacy so-called people, they really don't feel superior. They want to feel superior, not realizing what's right in front of their face. You got people that are truly their equal, but they prejudge us. They look at us and say we're beneath them because they have no merit to think on that level. So we can't even have a conversation unless we both come to the table as equals. I see Harry Dunn looking at it like, hey, I'm an American. What about my vote? I voted for him. Doesn't my vote count? And they were looking, I'm pretty sure, I'm glad he said that, because now all of those fools, if I could put it that way, can go home and rethink their life. That planted seed that Harry Dunn gave to say, hey, you know what? If we're going to come to the table, we need to come fair, because I voted too. Now they're going to be thinking, yeah, the election was stolen, but Harry voted for the other guy. Doesn't his vote count too? Like, you got to think about that. So maybe we should start the conversation, but start the conversation on a fair note. If they don't want to be fair, we need to call them on that. Every time they want to not be fair, we call them on that. When I say them, I'm talking about whoever it is. Because it seems to me, it's either you're American and you're Christian, you're for God and country, or you're not. And you can tell by their fruit. Jesus said it, by their fruit you shall know them. So let's look at this last part. Let's examine ourselves to see if we're in the faith. I always go back to God and country. So are you really an American? Are you really a Christian? Are you really for God and country? Think about that, because if you're faced with an example like what Harry Dunn did, he said, what about my vote? I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I voted for Joe Biden as well, but it has nothing to do with the fact that I voted for Joe Biden. It's the fact that, aren't we supposed to have fair elections? And it seems to me, just being a Republican, they don't want you to have rights to vote. But we got to remind ourselves that we're all Americans. We all have one vote. That counts. It's supposed to. But for some reason, it looks to me that we can't get along because they want to feel superior. They want to take this country and do whatever they want with it. No. We all live here. Let's all learn how to get along. But it's kind of weird because somehow I don't think they want that. They don't want equal terms. They want supremacy. It's kind of messed up. But I think they need to check themselves, as well as us. All of us need to check ourselves and say, hey, what is America all about? We all have this Constitution. We all supposed to believe in it, and we all have the Bible, the Word of God, and we all supposed to look at it just like God looks at it. It's magnified above all his name. We can't be tearing down the stronghold of God. We need to tear down the stronghold of the enemy. And the enemy is out to get all of us with mainly three things. And I said this before: doubt, dissension, and deception. Doubt, because he wants you not to believe in the so-called, God and country. He doesn't want you to believe that we're all equal and we can all work together and we can all have a conversation and we can all get along. We can, but you got to be fair. I don't see them wanting to have that. When I say them, because it's on both sides at the same time. But at the same time, I think for the majority, Republicans don't want to sit at the table. Look how they vote. Look how they treat their constituents. Look how they treat other people. It's crazy. I wish it wasn't like that, but it is. And then I'm looking at it like, how can we even come to the table, even have a conversation if you don't want to have equal terms? The rules of engagement should be that we all have this charity thing, right? We got to learn how to believe, bear, endure, and all this kind of stuff. How can we do that if they don't want to do that? Let's think about that. That's just little thoughts. But I do want you all to consider some things, because we're going to be continuing. This is a taste of things to come, I guess. We're going to be doing some more episodes, but what we're going to do from this point forward, and I'm putting myself on the spot, we're going to try to do, I'm probably edit this part out. What we're going to try to do, okay, I'm not. What we're going to try to do is we're going to start having the pre-recorded shows, because then when we put it out there, it will be something that would be like on time, of course, whatever happened today, it's water under the bridge. But I just want you all to know that that's what we're going to be trying to do in upcoming shows. It will be more like pre-recorded. And we might even do it the day before or so forth. I know these things take time and stuff like that, but I'm glad that you all bear with us. There's going to be some things that we're going to be doing with the channel, so that way it's going to continue the word, spreading of the gospel, and also helping people to learn how to cope with today's stressors and things of that nature, and learn how to just go on your daily walk. So if you haven't, subscribe, hit the notification bell, ouch, and like, share, and comment. We need some comments. That's good. And if you're so inclined, you can get on our list at enduretobesaved@gmail.com. Oh, I noticed that some people, not going to mention any names, some people want us not to contact them. That's fine. We have a lot of people we contact. It's a lot of people. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we don't disturb you, So you can drop us a line and say, oh, I don't need I don't need the reminder. That's fine. We don't take offense. It's just that, I think you all get the notifications if you're already a subscriber. So that's good. Okay, so I love you all. Please be safe. Look out for one another, and see you next time.